Introduction. My contact with the spiritual tradition of Lord Dattatreya was quite fortuitous, a discovery by chance. When I was collecting material for the comprehensive account of Sai Baba of Shirdi, I came across the experience of one Kushabhav. Kushabhav served his Guru Sri Datta Maharaj and learnt occult skills like mysterious transference of material objects. He could produce sweetmeats from nowhere by a wave of his hand with the power of the mantra and distribute the same to the amazed devotees as prasad. At one stage, he started pestering his guru to teach him black magic with which he could harm his opponents who derided him as a charlatan. The wise guru realized that it was not good for either of them to stay together any longer. He directed his disciple to seek spiritual guidance henceforth from Sri Sai Baba of Shirdi and himself retired to the Himalayas to pursue his own spiritual quest for the perfection. When Kushabhav arrived at Shirdi, Sai Baba was wild with rage and would not allow him to enter the mosque. He said that the sweetmeats produced by the farmer were not created, as the gullible devotees supposed, but were merely transformed from elsewhere by the power of a mantra. Thus, he said, it amounted to theft and cheating. The sweetmeats thus pollute their devout recipients spiritually and would inspire them in their turn to hanker after cheap occult powers instead of seeking spiritual enlightenment, which is the only noble object of man's life. Sai Baba insisted that unless the visitor chose to give up his weird practices and leave off the power at the holy river Godavari, he would not allow the latter to come to him. Kushabhav vacillated for some time and after much inner struggle had to give in. He went to the Godavari, threw away the iron bangle on his right hand, and taking the holy water in his palms, he vowed to give up all his occult powers as directed by Sri Sai Baba. To his amazement, he discovered that he could no longer produce such material objects by a wave of his hand. Henceforth, Sai Baba allowed him to visit him at the mosque and instructed him to read Sri Guru Charitra 108 times and visit holy Gangapur now and then. Later, Sri Sai Baba blessed him with the power of obtaining sacred acts by merely thinking about him. This incident drew my attention to Sri Guru Charitra as a potent means of winning the grace of a perfect master. Soon I discovered that Marathi texts which devotees study at Shirdi are those of this holy work. But none of the devotees knew English and I had no occasion to learn its contents for quite some time. Again, in the course of my study of the life of Sri Sai Baba, I came across incidents which demonstrated the spiritual identity of the great fakir with his equally great contemporary Sri Swami Samarth, more popularly known as Sri Akalkot Maharaj, 1856 to 1878. Naturally, I was drawn to learn more about the latter. Then I came to know that this life was a continuation of that Sri Nrsimha Saraswati, the second avatar of Lord Dattatreya in this age, celebrated in Sri Guru Charitra. I stumbled upon the subtleties of the Dattatreya tradition no less fortuitously ever since I visited Shirdi in 1963 and studied the marvelous life of Sri Sai Baba. I travelled extensively in search of such a Sadguru so that I could dedicate my whole life to his service. Once I visited Sri Ma Anandamayi at Naimisharanya, Uttar Pradesh during the Bhagavad Saptaha. At one of the daily expositions of the holy text, the revered speaker Sri Akhandananda Saraswati remarked that only a living Sadguru could lead his devotee to self-realization, and that a Sadguru who had cast off his body, however great he might be, can only fulfill prayers for one's material good. He spoke in Hindi, which I could only understand but cannot speak, and so I could not discuss with him. As Sai Baba was no longer available to me in flesh and blood, I wondered what I should do, but I had no chance to get the clarification. After a few months, I visited Shirdi on a proposed stay of 7 days. I wished to obtain Sai Baba's guidance and clarification in this matter. On the second day, I was very strongly impelled to visit my old student who was working in Pune. It was quite unusual as I never visited any of my friends or kinsfolk. I had to yield to the impulse and I reached Pune. My friend was away at the office, so I left my bag in his house and went out, wishing to spend the time in going around the city till my friend's return. Quite accidentally, I inquired at the wayside florist whether there was any great saint worth visiting in Pune. The shopkeeper directed me to visit Sri Gulavani Maharaj, a direct disciple of Sri Vasudevananda Saraswati. As soon as I entered the mutt, the aged saint greeted me saying, "Oh, the child of Sri Sai Baba has come." I at once realized that I could get a reliable clarification for my problem from him. He heard my question and said, "What the learned speaker said is true of only those who attained enlightenment through their efforts. But Sri Sai Baba of Shirdi is not such a one. He is the avatar of Lord Dattatreya. He manifests himself to his worthy devotees even today in his physical form and guides them. You are on the right track. Go ahead." When I took leave of him, I asked Sri Gulavani Maharaj to give me any books that might help me in my quest. At his call, a devotee gave me a Sanskrit translation of Sri Guru Charitra and a book of Sanskrit verses in praise of Lord Dattatreya. "These are the only copies left with us. You are fortunate in getting them," said the devotee. At once I realized that Sri Sai Baba had blessed me with three things: the solution of my doubt, a version of Sri Guru Charitra which I could read and for which I was longing, and the darshan and blessings of an eminent saint of the Datta tradition. I was all the happier to learn that Sri Vasudevananda Saraswati used to read Sri Guru Charitra every day, and that this, along with his other devotional practices, had won for him the darshan of Sri Lord Dattatreya in a vision, and his direct initiation with the mantra. The present work is a free English rendering of this work. I was more fully impressed by the value of the book when I learned that a large number of devotees were divinely directed to resort to Sri Akkalkot Maharaj as their guru as a result of their devout study of Sri Guru Charitra. About the work, Sri Guru Charitra was first written by Sri Gangadhar Saraswati in Marathi language. The eminent Marathi scholar L.R. Pangarkar says that the first two incarnations of the Lord Dattatreya, Sri Sripad Srivalabha and Sri Nrsimha Saraswati, the two protagonists of the immortal work, had flourished in the 14th and 15th centuries AD. The original text recounts in 53 chapters the life and teachings of two incarnations, about 7,000 verses. In the late 19th century, Sri Vasudevananda Saraswati, a famous saint of the Dattatreya tradition, translated the work in Sanskrit verses of equal number. Later, he was told in a vision by Lord Dattatreya that details pertaining to matters of Hindu religious ritual have infringed on the proper theme of the work, and was directed to abridge it into 2,000 verses. The present translator and Sanskrit Pandit who had assisted him in the reading the Sanskrit text were blessed with darshan and blessings of several great saints during and after the study and the translation of this Sanskrit work. This is quite in keeping with the subtleties of the Dattatreya tradition. The present English translator is still working hard to gather material about the historical background of the first two avatars of Lord Dattatreya. He hopes to furnish the same in more complete form in the subsequent editions of the work. The purpose of the translation, the present rendering into English, is in the modern age of cultural chaos and confusion of values, it will be of immense help to mankind if a large number of noble aspirants for spiritual perfection, their own and that of their fellows, come together in spirit in a process of collective self-attunement to the eternal spirit of Lord Datta through a widespread study of the work, and together all of them call upon the spirit of the perennial Guru to manifest himself amongst us and guide us along the noble path. Thirdly, as the life of Sri Sai Baba Shirdi, the latest and the most complete manifestation of Lord Datta, amply demonstrates, Dattatreya is one spirit that manifests itself through all the enlightened spiritual teachers of today that belong to various nations and religions. By the widespread study of Sri Guru Charitra and my other life work of Sai Baba the Master, ever larger number of responsive souls amidst us would be able to draw richly upon the grace of all these masters. Fourthly, a diligent study of these works would educate the masses of devout souls to transcend the vicious, narrow barrier of religion and race and pray with the Vedic seers. Let uplifting thoughts come to us from all directions. Fifthly, these devotees would be sufficiently informed about the hallmarks of true perfect masters, would not fall a prey to the wiles of half-baked, self-seeking charlatans who trade in instant, effortless techniques of pseudo-spiritualism. Philosophical and metaphysical background of Sri Guru Charitra. As a backdrop to the marvelous account of the avatars of Lord Dattatreya, Sri Guru Charitra presents a comprehensive resume of the whole of ancient Indian philosophy of life. It envisages human life as a search for lasting contentment, peace and bliss, and as a struggle for complete unfoldment of its vast spiritual potential. All of man's endeavors derive ultimately from this aspiration. Many fail to realize these goals in life owing to lack of proper understanding of man's innate nature and his relationship to the rest of all existence, of which human life is but one manifestation. Only when man understands the nature of the material universe as the manifestation of one universal spirit, and accordingly orients his life to it at the three levels of understanding, word, and deed, can he hope to attain his goal. Those who succeeded in accomplishing this task have, out of their spontaneous compassion of suffering humanity, enjoined a way of making all of one's life a single-minded pursuit of this goal, molding all of one's natural instinctive drives to contribute to its realization. Thus, the proper way of life is viewed as one continuous sacrament and ritual, made up of a series of several such befitting the various stages of human life. Such a view of life derives from a direct experience of the spiritual process that underlies the nature of all existence from moment to moment, gained by the enlightened ones. Ancient wisdom views the first cause as the nameless, formless, universal consciousness of the, or the spirit. The fundamental nature of this universal consciousness is to manifest the alternating states of activity and rest. The pure spirit was called the Parabrahman. Its dynamic aspect is called Prakriti. The whole of nature we see around us, from the distant nebula and the galaxies down to the smallest particles and fields of modern physics, constitutes Prakriti and its play. At the end of every active phase comes to the state of total dissolution of all material existence, and the two states are figuratively described as the sleep and wakefulness of Brahma, the Creator. In these are involved many subphases or cycles of time called kalpas, each bearing its own name. For instance, the present one is called Svetavaraha Kalpa, literally the Kalpa of the white boar. Each kalpa is subdivided into manvantras, each having its own universal lawgiver or Manu. Each manvantra is again subdivided into the sequence of 4 yugas, of which there is a definition in Sri Guru Charitra. At every phase of total dissolution or pralaya, all the living creatures and all other aspects of the previous active phase of material existence are said to recede into a dormant state in a subtle form, just as all our feelings, thoughts, and knowledge lie dormant in our individual consciousness during deep sleep. When we wake up, all these re-emerge into manifestation. So does it happen with the recommencement of the active phase of the universal spirit. Every active phase of the universal consciousness is said to begin as a stir in the divine will. The Word, as the Bible puts it, to manifest himself as the many. According to the Indian scriptures, the first to be created are spiritual principles called the 4 Brahma Manasa Putras, the spiritual offspring of Brahma the Creator, who chose to remain forever as such, that is, as fully enlightened sages and not get entangled. In the next phase of the active cycle were projected the Prajapatis, literally the progenitors of material creation and living creatures. Sages like Atri, who willingly chose to further the divine plan of creation. Then were projected the various conscious forces in nature described as gods by the Vedas. The rest of the material creation is a product of the collective harmonious functioning of these conscious principles described as the yagna. The whole of the active phase or prakriti is characterized by the three modes of functioning of the cosmic energy: sattva, rajas, and tamas, which can be described as harmony, activity, and confusion. After the evolution of the material universe, including the earth with all its flora and fauna, sages like Atri manifested themselves on earth in human forms and propagated knowledge of the fundamental creative processes among mankind. This body of knowledge is the Veda, which later came to be classified into the four Vedas. The sages also tried to impart all this knowledge to as many as possible through religious philosophy, metaphysics, and ritual. The whole process of creation of which man is a part was presented as a spontaneous, joyful, creative process of self-fulfilling activity with no other aim or goal. Man can live in harmony with the rest of creation with his own self, which is basically a manifestation of the cosmic or universal process, to the extent that he grows in this realization, and he can thus transcend all those narrow, selfish concerns which shut out such understanding and which are, in their turn, products of lack of such an understanding. Guru and disciple. As such, man, with the help of this understanding, has to inform and mold his every thought, word, and deed with the urge to realize this wisdom. That is, understanding molds thought, word, and deed. Cultured thoughts, word, and deeds actualize his understanding and thereby perfect it. Thus, in the form of a chain reaction, man enters the real, relentless stream of divine creation towards self-harmonization and perfection, freeing himself from the cocoon of petty selfish drives or needs that are projected as natural and legitimate by his limited, clouded view of creation. The latter is a blurred, distorted image obtained through the sense medium of his wrong understanding, or more correctly, no understanding. When one realizes this harmonization with the rest of the creation, the basic disharmony with himself implied by his former concept of the discreteness, distinctness of his own self, other selves, and things is dissolved, and he realizes the unity that is the essence of seeming diversity of forms. Such a one perceives the misery of others as remnants of disharmony of his own self and strives to resolve it, while, from the strength of his own perfection, he knows that there are in fact no others to be saved from misery. Such a one is called the Guru, the teacher that can make all our life struggle for lasting contentment and bliss worth the game. Without him, the immense creation and one's own disharmonious life together seems an ocean of misery of phenomenal existence. With his help, it is an ocean of the bliss of self-realization. Anyone who knows or intuits this is bound to love the Guru. His art strength with which he had hitherto loved wealth, his life, wife, and all else separately, is now to put together in adoration of the Master. It is on this basis that Sri Guru Charitra may be termed the glorification of Guru, who is the truth, the way, and the life, and is worthy of being loved with all the strength of one's soul and heart, as the Christ puts it. The proper conduct of a true disciple to the Guru, as depicted in the stories in Sri Guru Charitra, would seem childish forms of self-enslavement if this truth is not understood. The details of a disciple's conduct are not something which can be formally implemented, but they constitute the spontaneous experience of love. The joy of such love consists in acting it out, living it out. It is not the veneration of an individual called the Guru, it is the spontaneous realization of the essence of the Guru. It is wisdom in action that is the ultimate object of one's own life struggle. In short, only such a one is a disciple, and to him the Guru is all the gods all the holy places, and the rest. What his own life cannot give him, he is sure that Guru can, and hence the latter is dearer than the former than his own life. Do not humans beings take their lives for love, wealth, and fame, etc., which cannot promise as much? However, it is not everyone that can blossom into such a state of perfection, either of discipleship or guruhood. There are always a handful, like the most eminent scientists, poets, and national leaders. Guruhood is the fruit of perfection in preparation, perfection in discipleship, and ideal discipleship is itself a fruit of much preparation and endeavor. To ensure these to the best possible extent for the largest number, the sages have enjoined a scheme of life. The growing boy and girl also in Vedic times, even before his mind is caught up in the web of natural impulses born of wrong understanding, is left in the care of a learned man whose understanding was already stabilized enough to strive for the sole object of self-realization. This was called Upanayana, and it was performed between the ages of 7 and 9 years. For about 10 to 12 years, the growing boy leads a life of strict discipline of body, mind, and conduct, and prepares himself to lead life as a continuous sacrament aimed at achieving perfection. Those who gain unusual development among such brahmacharis, celibates, are permitted to renounce all worldly ties and pursuits immediately and to dedicate themselves wholly to the task of self-realization in the service of a Sadguru or a perfect master. Others are advised to accept their unpreparedness for the task realistically and marry girls who too were trained to cooperate with these in leading the ideal domestic life. The so-called arranged marriages are the relics of this tradition. Other forms of marriages, like the one by mutual choice of the partners, Gandhara Vivaha, too were allowed, though the former were preferred. In the Vedic times, so say some Smriti, the law text, Upanayana was enjoined for girls too. Owing to the growing demands on domestic life of the girls, this seems to have gone out of use. Subsequently, the girl of 8 or 10 years was married to a youth so trained, and he was to be her guru, guide, philosopher, friend, and lover in one. The idea of a wife thus came to be a replica of the guru-disciple relationship as described earlier. We can see the parallelism between the ways of life enjoined on a disciple and on an ideal wife, Pativrata, briefly in Sri Guru Charitra, and more elaborately in the Puranas and the Smriti texts. The total love that developed between so perfectly matched pairs was such that when the husband died, the wife found that the life was so worthless that she preferred to immolate herself on the funeral pyre of her husband's body, which is called the Sati Sahagamana. The inner feeling of self-dedication impels such an act and ensures her the very best of spiritual states after death. Later, this custom degenerated into a mere matter of family pride when, in the modern age, society has come very benignly to prohibit the practice. But even the Sati Sahagamana is said to be inferior to that ideal of love relationship in which even the very knowledge of the husband's death led to the spontaneous and instantaneous death of loving wife too. In its turn, this too was considered inferior to that power of woman's loving faith which could revive her deceased husband as depicted in the stories of Savitri and Satyavanta. The implication is that such as an ideal disciple, by the power of his devotion to and the faith in the Guru as the divine Trinity in one supernatural powers, a Pativrata too can win the same state by similar loving faith in her husband. As the husband was trained by his Guru already in the right way of life, he is considered the lawgiver to his wife who pursues the same goal of life. As her sons too would be similarly trained, she is expected to be under their care if her husband dies earlier than she, that is, if she cannot opt for Sati Sahagamana. Ultimately, it is God as Guru that saves the ideally trained man, and God as her husband saves her an ideal housewife. Hence, it is specifically stated that a genuine spiritual teacher teacher should initiate a woman only through her husband. This idea is implied when Sri Guru Charitra enjoins a woman to so revere her husband even if, in consequence of her misdeeds in a previous life, she were to obtain a husband who is wicked and cruel in this life. The same is implied when Sri Guru admonishes a seeker that forsook his Guru for being that seemed to him to be cruel and exacting. Besides, the Sri Guru says to that said disciple that it is a sin even to see the face of one who forsakes his Guru, for it shows the latter's unworthiness. So too a widow came to be looked upon as an omen of ill luck in the Indian society, for it was believed that her violation of the sanctity of marriages in some way in her previous life is responsible for her unfortunate condition in the present life. This might in fact be a device to ensure that a young widow takes all the precautions to see that her own devotion to her late husband does not waver through free mingling with men and women. Life of a widow is like that of a sannyasi, total dedication to spiritual endeavor. Only the latter lives under the care of her sons or brothers while the former wanders homelessly. Such a plan of life enables man to see through the lure of instinctive drives and to qualify for the guidance of a Sadguru. It takes many lives to perfect it. Most of us fall off almost at every turn. The Sadguru preserves through all of them to draw us again on the path. This truth has been amply affirmed by even modern saints like Sri Sai Baba of Shirdi and Swami Samarth of Akkalkot, the two latest avatars of Dattatreya. Sri Guru Charitra affirms the caste system of the Veda. The Veda views the society as an organism which naturally produces groups of individuals with different aptitudes and abilities, so that each group can function like a specialized organ for the well-being of the whole. But as man is endowed with intelligence, playing his legitimate part in the life of the total system involves deliberate choice and discipline under the guidance of the sages. This ensures further development of the individual's abilities, which is imperative for his spiritual perfection. On the other hand, whenever faith in the system flags, the individuals attach fanciful values to certain occupations and scramble for them. In the ensuing struggle, the earlier identification of their groups with the names of the castes plays havoc as it's now doing in India. To ensure against such decay, each of the castes was taught its own dharma, its values, and its relation to the dharma of the others. The Sudras, who serves the other three castes and enables them to function effectively, is the foot on which the social organism or the collective soul stands, and hence devout Hindus bow to the feet of the Lord. Vaishya, the producer and trader of all goods and grain, depends immediately upon the Sudra, so he corresponds to the thigh of the Lord. The Kshatriya, who guards law and order within the society and protects it from external aggression, is said to have originated from the arms of the Lord. The Brahmin is the guardian of all branches of knowledge and their grand synthesis in the wisdom of the self, the Brahman. He, like the theoretician in the Marxist society, guides the material and the spiritual pursuits of the society in strict harmony and ensures that neither of them encroaches upon the other. The first three ashramas are the bedrock on which the fourth one stands and to which they lead. Like all organisms, the social system too decays in time despite all care. The direction of change is from its pristine state in the Krita Yuga to its total decay in the Kali Yuga. Although the collective life force strives its best to arrest and delay the process of social decay and repeatedly attempts to restore it as far as possible. The collective soul of mankind manifests itself as repeatedly the spiritual masters, the gurus, to redefine the tradition and to correct the aberrations of dogmatism. So did the Christ for the Jewish law and Muhammad for the Arab law. Thus the Smriti text enjoins strict adherence to their dictates in general. They specifically state that the instructions of a perfect sage have a precedence when one can find such. So too, regarding the implementation of the law, one is told to follow the practice of the wise as the model. At human nature being a part of the natural phenomenon of decay, we find orthodoxy fanatically adhering to its own forms of inhumanity in the name of sacred law, in spite of what the gurus and traditional texts teach them. To counter this trend, the sages strengthen the faith and wisdom in the hearts of the individuals, that the practice of religious rites and rituals like yagnas and vratas is an essential part of karma or righteous action, intended to nullify the effects of past misdeeds and ensure proper motivation for the right action in the future births. The assurance of Sri Guru that he would forever abide at Gangapur and go around the village for bhiksha at noon is literally true even today. It is customary for devotees visiting the holy place to go for bhiksha too. On my second visit to the place in 1975, while partaking of it under a tree, I remarked to a South Indian sadhu who sat by me that Sri Guru's external presence might be a well meant fabrication. At first, he seemed to doubt whether it would be worth the while to try to enlighten me. Later, his attitude changed. He said, "Listen, I've been visiting this place for a few decades. Once, as I was devoutly reading Sri Guru Charitra at the Sangama, I suddenly felt that I should try or recognize him some day when he comes for bhiksha and seek his personal blessing. Accordingly, I studied the holy book with ever great zeal. At the same time, I began to observe every devotee that arrived there on days when visitors were the fewest, so that I can identify any other form in which Sri Guru might turn up for bhiksha. Day by day, my expectation grew up to the highest pitch, to a high pitch, and when at last it was like an ecstasy that gripped my being throughout the day. One night, Sri Guru appeared in my dream like a pious Brahmin and said in a stern voice, "Fellow, don't try to catch me amidst the crowd of visiting devotees. It is my secret, and it does not behove you to probe it." The next minute I woke up and reflected on the dream. I could vividly remember that despite his form and appearance, I was sure that he was Sri Guru. Evidently, my zealous prayer and trial have evoked a response from him. Having come thus far in my effort, should I relent? I decided to press on till I could achieve my object. Strangely enough, from that day onwards, I never again experienced that sense of his presence which swayed my whole being earlier. I was only quietly happy and assured that I was in the sight of my success. One day, the devotees at Gangapur were unusually fewer, and it was my best opportunity to observe and note them individually. At about 7:30 a.m., the moment I finished my dip in the river and came to the bank, I had a severe headache and high fever. I was feeling giddy and extremely weak. At once, I lay down under a tree and fell asleep. When I woke up at 3 p.m., I was quite well and very hungry. It was long past the hour of bhiksha. Yet, as it was my vow to live only on bhiksha, I at once proceeded to a few houses and called out for the same. At all the places I was told they had nothing left to give me. At one house, when I doggedly pleaded, the master of the house was furious and said, "You seem to have come here only to fill your belly, you worthless sadhu. When you came for the noon bhiksha, I gave you a roti." I protested that I did not come for bhiksha that day at all, but a few passers-by confirmed the man's accusation. I had to give in and quietly walked away, crestfallen and weak. I knew that something had happened that I should face such a ridiculous situation. That evening I felt weak and lost all my appetite and slept very early. Again the same Brahmin appeared in my dream. Amidst laughter, he was telling his companions how he had fooled me. At last he said to me, "Yesterday, as you were asleep, I went in your form for bhiksha. Henceforth, I gave up my foolish attempt. Now I know that Sri Guru is here and is quite responsive." The sadhu met me the next day and incidentally told me that a few decades ago, the priests at the Math on the eve of an important festival were cleaning the padukas of Sri Guru with water and coconut fiber. The latter contained a small piece of coconut shell. When the priest rubbed a little hard, there was a scratch on one of the padukas and the blood oozed out of it. The priests were all quite scared and tried their best to stop it, but in vain. They panicked and sent word to His Holiness Sri Vasudevan and Saraswati, who was then camping nearby. The Holy One rushed to the mutt, and when he chanted a few verses glorifying Sri Guru, the bleeding stopped. Would the Padukas bleed again? If? I asked. Perhaps they would if Lord chooses to bless you with such an experience, the sadhu replied. Indeed, experiences are personal and cannot be thus argued about. If we have such an experience, would it suffice another? Should we not put our hand to the plough and never turn back? To spiritual aspirants, identifying and contacting a Sadguru, a perfect master, is the crux of the problem of spiritual evolution of man, both collective and individual, especially in present times, when the mass media and the fanfare have made it more of a craze than the serious pursuit. Yet fortunately for the serious-minded, there is a hope and a clear way: the devout study of Sri Guru Charitra. The phenomenon is analogous to that of a remote control initially, leading to immediate personal contact. A gadget must be capable of receiving the remote commands. The seeker too has to evolve in himself some potential which can respond positively to the subtle, all-pervasive spiritual field of the Master. The study of Sri Guru Charitra does just this for you. The perennial wisdom, as Aldous Huxley puts it, has affirmed with one voice that man is potentially the spirit. The kingdom of heaven is within, and it can be developed ad infinitum. The study of Sri Guru Charitra focuses our inherently extrovert awareness on that spiritual potential in us, of which Sri Guru is an objective manifestation, an archetype, or a sort of reflector of our awareness on to its original self. As we persevere diligently, our awareness gets oriented to His presence every moment of our life. At one stage, the message is strong and unmistakable. The goal, the perfect master, is sighted. In His perpetual, immediate presence, our potential matures and the seeker and the sought become one. Till then, Sri Guru Charitra is the master, this end of this innate tie. And such a one never proclaims himself to the world. For him there is no world apart from his master, no seeking for disciples, and no need of constant reassurance of his credentials to anyone. The path may seem too long for some, but if one is genuinely interested in it, the pleasure of it is the journey. Only such a one reaches the goal, for it is not an outward journey with spatial and temporal implications, but it is an inward ripening. The fruit ripens through contact with the tree. The proper method of studying the text is begin it on a Thursday and to conduct it as below. Keep a beautiful picture of Sri Dattatreya and or of Sri Guru. Offer a light or a candle, joss sticks, flowers and sandal paste. Invoke his presence by chanting the words in praise of the Guru. That is Guru Brahma, meaning Guru is the creator, the preserver, and the annihilator. Guru is the Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwara. Guru is the Absolute himself. Adorations to such a Guru. Then offer a few pieces of candy to him. Then read the book as follows. The first day 7 chapters, second and third days 4 chapters each, thereafter 2 chapters per day. On the concluding day, feed 3 or at least 1 pious Brahmin, sadhu, or a poor woman. We must look upon him as the form of Sri Guru. We keep reading this like this over and over again. One may read it once in 3 days or even a day, ardently seeking his guidance. Acharya E. Bharadawaja, that is Vijayadashami 1987.